Good evening. Croeso. Welcome. Here we go. Last time. Do you know what? Each time I do the cafe, I always think, do we have enough to talk about? And I always think, like, God, I could talk more and more. So this is a talk on hormonal health. And this is the third hormonal health talk I would have delivered in this last week. So I did the liver event last Wednesday, looking very specifically on the influence of not having hormones in menopause and how that changes hormonal health. Then on the weekend, again with menopause, kind of understanding the journey of our hormonal profile as we move from child to adult to older adult, and how that changes alongside the aging process. So today we're going to kind of cover it in a little bit more broader sense. So I'm going to write in here hello, and you know the drill. You know the drill. I put my cardigan on. I'm cold. Is anybody else cold? It's middle of May. I've got a photo of me in the retreat last May in like 20 degrees, and I'm cold. Is anybody else cold? I'm going to have to put my phone on. Oh, you're here. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, cool. All right. So the more and more I find out about hormonal health, the more and more fascinated I become, because all of a sudden I think, like, this makes far more sense. So instead of saying, like, eat that food, you lose weight, or do that exercise, you'll get good guns, you kind of go like, but hormonally, when we have the hormonal influence, it all changes. So let's have a look at the first thing. So we're going to talk about hormonal health. Have you got? Do you know in the retreat this weekend? I love the retreat this weekend, but you know I've done this is about my 10th retreat now, and what I've given this time, oh, I should have brought it with me. I gave them all like an A5 notebook, and I'm thinking of sending people out the A5 notebook in Café Medi, because I realised in my handbook there's not enough room to write everything down, is there? So you need to get a handbook. Listen to my voice. You need to get a handbook just to make sure that, you know, when you are having some kind of idea, that you record it. Maybe you can record it in your notes here. All right, so let's have a look at the endocrine system. So I covered the endocrine system in sports science, but what they didn't do is kind of link. They kind of went like, this is the endocrine system, this is what it does. This is nutrition, this is what we know. This is physiology, this is what we know. What I think now with a degree, what they should have done is kind of said, like, the endocrine system influences your nutrition and your physiology and your psychology. And without understanding the endocrine system fully, you are missing a trick. Luckily, you have me, and I'm nosy. All right, shall I get going? Shall I just read my script? All right, so the endocrine system is the body's communication network that involves both glands in the body, like your thyroid and your pituitary gland and your pancreas, all of these kind of things you know of, but also the hormones. The role of the endocrine system is to regulate and coordinate the physiological processes. So I would say, like, your endocrine system is like the Royal Mail or DPD or Every or whatever delivers stuff. So you go, I want that product, and you say, bring it to my house, and then the Royal Mail brings it or DPD brings it. So that's what the endocrine system does. The body goes, I'm hungry. The brain goes, we need food. And it delivers the hormone to make you feel hungry. So a lot of the systems include kind of how we make energy, our metabolism, how we repair, how we grow, you know, whether we're growing nails or hair or muscle, how we respond to stress, how we sleep, even our kind of ovulation. All right, ovulation is all hormonal. Mood, what kind of mood we're in, whether we're in a good mood or whether we're in down mood. And I haven't even touched on people who are neurodivergent, because neurodivergent people have a different reaction in their endocrine system. How we feel motivated to do things, so this is all about dopamine and serotonin. How we monitor our blood glucose, like we talked about type 2 diabetes, about the cell open, cell closed. Our body temperature, whether we're cold. You will laugh if you see me now, right? I've got my blanket on. I've got my thick socks on from Christmas and my slippers. And I put the heating on. Don't tell my husband, he doesn't think we should have the heating on in May. That's a kind of old-fashioned thing, isn't it? Heating goes off in May. But also your cardiovascular function. So whilst the nervous system communicates quickly with electrical system, the endocrine system communicates slowly with chemical messages called hormones. These hormones travel through the bloodstream and target tissues such as muscle, brain, and organs such as your heart, your liver, and your gut. You can think of the endocrine system like a regulatory system, okay? And it maintains a balance. So we call this homeostasis. So homeostasis is like your, I don't know, maybe it's like your thermostat in your house kind of going like, yes, we need the room at 18 degrees, we need the temperature up, we need the temperature off, that kind of thing. So there are different endocrine glands, okay? I'm just going to go through these quickly because we don't need to remember these. These are just like the different parts of the endocrine system so you can understand. So one is the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus sits at the back of the head near your spinal cord, and it controls things such as your body temperature, whether you're thirsty, whether you're stressed, whether you're hungry, whether you need to sleep, and what's called your circadian rhythm. So circadian rhythm is when you are awake and when you're asleep. Put in the comments, are you a lark or an owl? Okay, so some people like to get up early in the morning and then by about 8 o'clock at night they're tired. Other people can't wake up early in the morning, they wake up later in the day, but they're still awake at midnight. So these, the hypothalamus sends messages to the pituitary gland. So the pituitary gland is often called the master gland because it releases the hormones that control the other endocrine glands. So this could be like thyroid function. You all know I've got low thyroid. Reproduction, okay, whether you're ovulating or not. Growth, as in hair growth, nail growth, muscle growth. How stressed you are, type A personality, type B personality, and milk production. Luckily, we don't do that, but we've all been in the state maybe where we've had babies. Which is really interesting because the pituitary gland also stimulates the adrenal gland that makes cortisol. So the thyroid gland, as you know, is in the neck here. Okay, it's called the butterfly gland. And you will see people with, overactive thyroid. This part of their neck is very swollen. And it affects two thyroid hormones, T3 and T4. They regulate your metabolism. So because I've got low thyroid and I'm on quite a high dose of low thyroid, and my thyroid problem was triggered by menopause. So it means I get cold more often, I store body fat more often, I find it harder to lose weight. It influences energy production, body temperature, heart rate, and cognitive function. So people with low thyroid levels experience fatigue, cold intolerance, and weight gain, but people with high levels of thyroxine have more anxiety, they lose weight, and they've got a higher heart rate. So the adrenal glands are the other one. They sit on top of the kidneys and they do cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. Cortisol helps to regulate blood glucose, inflammation, and stress. And adrenaline is all about, are you ready? The pancreas is really interesting. So the pancreas is all about insulin. So people with type 1 diabetes, their pancreas is not working properly. people with type 2 diabetes fatigues the pancreas to the point that it doesn't understand the signaling. And I think this is really interesting because, for example, the hypothalamus makes us feel stress, and it says to the pituitary gland, I'm feeling stressed. The pituitary gland signals to the adrenal glands, and then cortisol is released. And that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or called HPA, is how most hormonal systems work. And I just love all of this because I just think like, okay, this is how we talk to each other. So this week we're looking at hormonal health, not simply in menopause in isolation, but really in terms of the broader relationship between hormones, metabolism, whether we're stressed, what kind of energy we feel, are we tired, are we lethargic, are we like hyper, how much sleep we get. And I met somebody who came to the retreat on the weekend who said that following our retreat, she had 2.5 hours of deep sleep and slept for nearly 9 hours. It's really interesting. So the retreat days really target hormonal health. And that's what I work on. Everything I do in the cafe is about hormonal health. So stress, energy, sleep, exercise, anything to do with long-term health, because hormones influence every physiological system in the body. They regulate how you make energy, whether you're feeling energetic, whether you're tired. They organize your blood glucose to go into the cell or not. They maintain muscle health. They maintain cardiovascular function, your mood, how quickly you recover, your appetite. And when we talk about appetite, I think it's really interesting because we can talk about appetite as in, you know, sometimes you say like, oh, they've got a good appetite because you eat lots of food and you feel hungry. Or you can have a poor appetite and you don't eat lots of nutrition. So appetite is about the two hormones, leptin and ghrelin, that make you feel hungry and satisfied with food. And we talked about, you know, the influence about how these hormones change in menopause, but these hormones are present in everybody. So do we understand, are we feeling hungry, or maybe we're just like hormonally out of balance? We don't know. I just find it's really interesting because if you think like your hormones affect your heart, and that's a lot to do with stress and your mood, whether you're feeling happy or sad, whether you sleep well, whether you're motivated to do things. And I think, like, you know, most people will only think about hormones being to do with, like, have you got your period? You know, are you having a baby? That's the only time we really talk about it. But the reality is that hormonal health is all about your body. And one of the interesting shifts in the more recent years, and when we're talking about maybe the last 20 years, is that people are beginning to understand that feeling extremely tired all the time, finding life difficult, overwhelming, finding the motivation to exercise really low, is not to do with you, it's to do with the balance of hormonal health. And if we can sort that out, everything else becomes easier. When our hormones are out of balance, we get that fatigue, but we also get reduced resilience. So we're more likely to have every cough and cold that's going around, pick up flu bugs, stomach bugs, everything. We might find that we hold more weight in that central abdominal area. We have poor recovery, you know, cuts take longer to heal. We have a spot and it takes ages to go. Or we hurt our knee and 6 months later it's still there. Or we have brain fog, we can't think straight, we can't understand things. And it's not always about, you know, I'm just getting older. It's more to do with what that's called the physiological adaptation that happens across all of these systems that are talking to each other. What happens in menopause is that estrogen is a key kind of component of all of this communication. And once estrogen's not there, everything's gone down, and you can't hear what they're saying. That's what happens. So today we're going to look at what are the major hormones that are involved in our health and metabolism, how those hormones change as we get older, what is the role of cortisol and stress, what is the interaction between hormones and exercise, why having more muscle helps our hormones, why having sufficient sleep helps our hormones, why eating good food helps our hormones, and then looking at behaviour change. We're also going to touch on liver function because I did that last week and it would be a shame not to share that information with you. Excuse me. Okay, so hormones are chemical messengers. Okay, we talked about that. When we think about the way that hormones change, is that we kind of look at the way that things we used to do that felt easy suddenly become more challenging. So say like when we were younger, all right? So if you see a photo of me when I'm younger, I'm like a stick. I told you, somebody compared me to my body to 2 aspirins on an ironing board. As you can tell, I was a bit traumatized at the time because I was like 14. But I think that I've always been like that skinny, twiggy girl who didn't have any muscle or anything, didn't eat very much because I didn't like food. And it was really interesting to see how my body changed when I became pregnant, how my body changed after pregnancy, and how my body changed when I reached menopause, because that is the only time in my life that I've ever been overweight. And my lifestyle hadn't changed, my hormones had changed. And my hormones had only changed because I had ovarian cancer and no ovaries. I always wonder what would have happened had I not had ovarian cancer. Would I still be the skinny mini? You know, would I still be able to resonate with everybody else out there who is going through hormonal systems and kind of going like, what the hell is going on? You know, I used to do this and this happens. And I think it's a very interesting journey, isn't it, when we look at hormonal health. So I'm going to look at 3 specific hormones with you today. So number 1, I'm going to look at cortisol and the role of cortisol in stress. Number 2, I'm going to look at, well, let's look at cortisol first. Otherwise, I'll get lost in it. Okay. So cortisol stress is really interesting because cortisol isn't kind of as the baddie, because it does massive amount of stuff. So for example, if we're exercising and our muscles go, we need more energy, we haven't got enough fuel to keep going, okay, it's like your petrol tank ticking on empty. Your cortisol signals to your liver to release more glucose. That's like you going to the garage and putting more fuel in your car. We need that. Cortisol also makes us focus. All right. So last week, I was saying, and I'm really sorry, I haven't loaded the videos onto YouTube because last week I was in hyper focus for the retreat. So I had huge levels of cortisol. I was like up at 5 o'clock, sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning, working, also teach my classes, looking after my mum, blah, 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 blah. And I love teaching retreats. I absolutely love it. It makes me feel good. It makes me smile thinking about it. Makes me excited to do it. So cortisol helped me feel wakeful, make me feel happy, made me feel motivated. Normally, I would not be so last minute. I normally am before, but life got in the way. We also know that when we have high cortisol, if we run a race, we can be like, oh, on high energy. That cognitive alertness, that kind of, deadline, we want cortisol. So cortisol is not the baddie because it helps us and it has a rhythm. We've talked about this rhythm before, you know, about how it gets out of sync. What happens is if we are constantly in this, okay, so this is why I haven't done my thing, because I actually felt the minute I got home, the thing I did was I live by the sea. I sat outside, I lit my fire, my bonfire, whatever it's called, fire pit, and I sat outside and I just felt everything go, ooh. Okay, so it was like the post cortisol. But for some people that doesn't happen. Some people it's like, oh my God, you know, I've got another email. Oh my God, you know, I need to answer social media. Oh my God, you know, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And every day is like that. And all of a sudden, the cortisol becomes dysregulated. And this can really interfere with your nervous system. And it influences all of the positive things that I talked about. So it influences your appetite. It influences where you store fat. It influences your sleep. It influences your pain. Okay? So when you hurt yourself, it really hurts. If you've got a headache, it's a really bad headache. It influences your glucose stability and it influences your recovery from exercise. So when you exercise, you ache and you ache and you can't face doing exercise because you're tired. So have a look when you're looking at cortisol, which is a great hormone, how stressed you feel. If you have other stress in your life, you might find you're more sensitive to the cortisol. Now there's ways of getting rid of cortisol, and one of them is the breath work that we do on the system. Okay, so the research demonstrates that cortisol interacts with both insulin and inflammatory signaling. And I think this is really interesting. You know, I love the work that Andrew Huberman does, because what he does, he says, like, the things you can do are this. So there was a time last week when I had huge work pressures. I had to do cafe, I had to look after my mum, I had to teach my classes, I had to do the retreat, I had to plan the summer cafe, I had to get the summer cafe organised, I had to do the web pages. And I used to think, like, I won't walk the dogs in the morning because I'll save myself 20 minutes. And I did it for one day. And I thought, Rachel, you're not even listening to your own advice. You know that 20 minutes of exercise is good for you. So then the rest of the week, what I did was as you know, I live on the cliff. If you see my address, it's Cliff Road. So my house is here, then there's a road, then there's a cliff, then there's a sea. So I walk up the cliff to the poo bag bin and down the cliff back to my house. I walk the dogs, they go sniff around, they do their daily business, we look at the sea, there's birds in the sky, the tide is in, the tide is out, it's windy, it's raining, whatever. That sorts me out. So if you can imagine, right, the cliff takes maybe 7 minutes to walk up, maybe more than that, and about 6 minutes to walk down. When I walk up like this. Okay. I got up at 6 and I'm like, oh God, I'm so tired. I walk up the road, and by the time I get to the dog poo bin, I feel better. And when I get back to the house, I feel normal, if that makes sense. So I feel like I'm ready to face the day. And then I can come into the house, I can do the dogs, I can get my mum's tablets, I can do my mum's breakfast, I can do myself a cup of tea, I can do Bryn a cup of tea, I can put the coffee machine on, tidy the lounge, open the curtains, do all the jobs, and then I'm ready to do the cafe. And that's what I've learned from hormonal health, is that I kind of don't wait to feel motivated to do it. Because if I waited to feel motivated to do it, I wouldn't do it. Okay, I wouldn't do it. I just know You've got to trust the process. I know that 10 minutes of sunlight in the morning influences your hormonal system and makes you feel energetic. So even when I feel absolutely rubbish tired, I still get up. I have to say, walk in my pajamas with a coat on. And like I say, when I first start walking, it's like, by the time I come back, within 10 minutes, my hormonal system has changed. And I love that, because all of a sudden I kind of go like, I trust the process. I trust the fact that even though I feel absolutely rubbish and I do not want to go for a walk, I do not want to walk the dogs, I really just want to sit down and have a cup of tea. I don't want to go outside. I don't want to get my coat on. I don't want to get my shoes on. I do it. And that understanding of my hormonal health has been really key to me maintaining my own exercise protocol, but also to nag you about it, because you know that every time we finish exercise, I'm going like, go outside for a walk. And when you understand that your hormones influence it, it makes such a difference. And I find this fascinating. I almost feel like saying to people, come on, you can do it. So tonight in Pilates, I've got one of the nurses, I've got lots of nurses in Pilates. I've got one of the nurses in Pilates who works on liver health, and she was the one who recommended me to go to the liver health event. And she said to me, can you please send to us the handout, more handouts, and the card, you know, the business card of where to go for menopausal health information. Because people don't understand that liver health is linked to menopause, but also doing exercise can improve your liver health. You know this. You're in the cafe. You should be applauded for what you do, because you're like me now, aren't you? You're kind of going like, there are times I get up and I kind of go like, but you kind of go like, well, Rachel's doing it, I'll do it. And then you do it, and then you feel better. And the more times you do it feeling rubbish, and then finish it feeling better, even if you ache and you're sweating, you more kind of things you think like, okay, let's try that again. And that's what regular things happen. And I think this is why hormonal health is so important, because if you're training, like you see loads of people, I see loads of people training, maybe it's because I'm like a fitness instructor, but all my pages like full of people kind of doing high rocks and marathons and, you know, Pilates, and they're all achieving something. So they have a goal. So I'm going to run a 10K. I'm going to do a high rocks in Cardiff. I'm going to do this. And you sign up and you pay and you commit to a deadline. All of the things that we talk about in goal setting. But what they don't realise is that hormonal drive, you know, the cortisol that's keeping them motivated, the dopamine that's keeping them motivated. What we do is we kind of say like, the only competition is with me. Nobody is observing me doing what I do. I'm only based on my own feedback. You might get people saying to me, oh my God, you look really good. So I know, where's Yvonne? Yvonne, are you here? So somebody said to Yvonne, oh my God, you've really changed. Because they met in the retreat last year, and they met again in the retreat this year, and they noticed that Yvonne had physically changed, but Yvonne didn't feel any different. She knew she was stronger. So it was really interesting to see that other people could see the change. And what I'm thinking about is this. If you went to a gym, people go like, oh my God, you look different. You look better. You look fitter. You look happy. You know, you look very content. But in cafe, you're doing it at home alone. You need to feel it. And the feeling comes from your hormonal system. I've got 10 minutes left and I haven't even touched on my talk. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is stimulated by a hormone. So when we look at dopamine, it's not just about, feeling good. It's about that pursuit of feeling good. It's about the anticipation of feeling good. It's about me going for my dog walk, knowing I'm going to feel rubbish for the first 3 minutes, and then I'm going to feel better. And this has a huge impact on what's called exercise adherence. So many people think that motivation appears first and then you do action, but neurobiology works the other way around. So action makes you motivated. Progress is influenced by dopamine. We want to make sure that dopamine is always hit. So if you want to improve your hormonal health, dopamine, even though it's a neurotransmitter, can really help. And part of the things that help it is this. Number one is being consistent. So it's about doing it, whether you say to yourself, I'm going to do 4 classes this week or 5 classes this week or 2 classes this week, that you do it. That you work on enjoying the session, about getting stronger. It's also about kind of putting the effort in to do the sleep routines, to do the breath work we talked about, to do the sleeping. It's also about your nutrition. It's about feeding your body the right food. But it's also about rest. You cannot work. You have to have rest. But rest doesn't mean lying down in bed, because if you do not manage rest, then sleep doesn't happen. So if I go back to the lady who said she slept for like 2 hours longer after the retreat day, this is what we do in the retreat day. We talk about hormonal health. We eat the best food. We have company, and we do deep breathing and relaxation. And that is like a reset. So when you're going to reset your phone, or you're going to reset your computer, or reset anything, you have to take it back and start it again. And that's what rest does. How do we build in rest? How do we build in time between the hard work to allow us to work again? You know fully well, I only ever do I never do longer than 6 weeks in cafe, because more than 6 weeks is too much. Okay, I think maybe the first cafe I did longer, because in the university we used to do 12 weeks because it was university. When we overstimulate it, for example, constantly, this is 3 people have said to me, I didn't go on my phone once, because if we're constantly kind of going on, I'm going to look at my phone all the time, I'm going to keep up with things all the time, we are overstimulating it. And whilst that kind of satisfies us for those 5 to 10 minutes, if we do it consistently, it means that we don't tune into our body, because we're taking our rest elsewhere. And then that influences our sleep and recovery. So sleep is the most powerful regulator of our hormonal health, because in sleep, it regulates cortisol, it helps growth hormone, it helps immunity, it helps our memory, it helps us repair muscle, it helps us organize our hormones that control our appetite, and it helps our type 2 diabetes. When we don't sleep, all of these systems are out of kilter. Now, I don't mean 1 night no sleep, okay? We can all cope with 1 night no sleep. I told you last week I had 1 night, 3.5 hours sleep. But I can manage that because I don't have it on a frequent basis. Having poor sleep reduces our resilience, and therefore you know, if we had poor sleep and poor sleep and poor sleep, if I had 10 nights of 3 hours, I wouldn't be teaching in the morning. I'd be phoning in going like, can I have a day off sick? So we want to think about ways to do that. So how do we get around to this? Because I've got 10 minutes left. So number one, what are the 10 important things that help you regulate your hormonal system? The first one you're going to think is weird, because the first thing that helps you regulate your hormonal system is being stronger, physically stronger. And you're going to probably think about, you know, it's going to be about Zen and it's going to be about deep breathing. They count. But being strong means you have more things to deal with your hormones. So say, like, for example, I told you about, like, your hormones are coming in like this. If there's only you dealing with it and you're a little teeny person, it's not as good as you being a big strong man. Well, a big strong person. So the more muscle mass you have, we know that strength training matters enormously because it has a huge impact on your physical resilience. Number two is you need to learn to stabilize your blood glucose. So include protein, fiber, healthy fats. So omega-3, sardines. Oh, I've moved my poster. I've got a sardine poster I'm going to put up in the cafe for next time. And understanding how these help to manage your energy. Number three is sleeping, because sleep disturbs everything. If you don't sleep well and you've got good muscle mass, you've got more resilience. If you don't sleep well but you eat well, you've got more resilience. But if you don't sleep well and you don't have good muscle mass and you don't eat well, you can see how sleep becomes worse. Number four is you've got to move. All right? It doesn't matter what you do, whether you go for a walk, whether you do squats by the sink, who cares? Movement throughout the day improves that blood glucose and prioritizes muscle mass. Then you have to think about nervous system regulation. So some people are more anxious than other people, okay, just naturally. So I am a highly anxious person. My husband is horizontal. Between us, we have good energy balance. So he has that ability to calm me down. I've told you the story. I used to have alopecia before I met my husband. And since I met my husband, I've never had alopecia since, because he calms my nervous system down. I make him do things because otherwise I think he would be a sloth. Don't tell him that. He'd be cross. But how do we manage our stress? The other thing that we have to prioritize is looking after our heart, because our heart is highly influenced by hormonal health. Whether that's too much fat in the bloodstream, whether that's high stress, whether that's no sleep, anything like that, we know cardiovascular health is the biggest killer. So how do we do that? We have to look after movement, we have to look after nutrition. So we've talked about being more muscular, stabilizing blood glucose, sleeping, not, sedentary behavior, understanding our stress, then we deal with the heart. The other thing that you need to think about if you want to improve your hormonal profile is not to be too aggressive with your changes. If you kind of go like, okay, right, on Monday, I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that, that becomes a stress for your body. You have to think about how you can make the small changes. And it was really interesting today. TikTok randomly throws up videos, and they randomly threw up a video from Matthew Rees talking about St. David's Day. So St. David's common statement, and Winnie will back me up on this, is gwneud y pethau bychain, do the small things. And if you can do the small things and not be too aggressive with your changes, you will support your hormones better. I didn't say the eighth one. The eighth one is consistency, because I nag you about being consistent. I love the way that you post saying, like, I'll catch up later, I'm catching up now. Because that understanding of being vocal and being consistent is key. Now, next week, we've got 1 week off between cafes. I don't think we've ever had 1 week off between cafes, ever. I want you to take a rest. I want you to do something different, not to catch up on any old cafe sessions you haven't missed. You've got the rest of the summer to do that. Do something that is good for your mental health and well-being. Go for long walks, eat good nutrition, do some of the kind of things we were talking about. It was really interesting because in the next cafe we're going to do Shinrin Yoku. And today there was a really interesting paper publicised and promoted by the Welsh Government about the value of being outside in nature. Number 9 is to understand that you cannot be driven all of the time, not even for 6 weeks. There's going to be days when you kind of go like, I can't please do any more exercise. Or there's going to be days where you're going to do maybe 4 sessions in one day. That motivation fluctuates is good. Now, I never, ever, ever wait for motivation to exercise because it's my job. Because if I wanted to wait for motivation to exercise, there'd be times where people will go to Pilates and I wouldn't be there. So I think that sometimes turning up when you're not motivated is good, because you need to understand you can't always be motivated to do exercise. And the final part is, of course, is to respect recovery. Because if you don't respect your body enough to recover, you don't nurture it. We talked last week about how would you talk to your friend? How would you say to somebody who is struggling? What would you say to them? And when we recover, we gain resilience. So, you know, I've told you it's my job already. I hurt my knee. I don't work. I don't earn any money. Life's not always about money, but there are always things that you want to have consistency for. So how did I manage to be resilient? And, you know, understanding how we can modify, adapt, kind of go like, but not quit. Don't quit. You know, recovery is your active choosing, not your quitting. So next week, I've already said, have a week of recovery. Have a week of doing something different. Switch your early morning alarm off. Go for walks in the forest, exercise, eat the food, take time out, go to bed early, do the things, and then come back into the cafe. We've got 3 weeks of cafe. It's going to be great fun. And then you've got, like, I think 10 days off. And then we've got morning cafe only. And then you have a 7-week break. That is when you can catch up on the missed sessions. I love hormonal health. It has changed my whole mindset about training. It's changed the way I speak to people going through the menopause, because I now introduce it as, this is how your hormones change. Respect it, understand it, work with it, build it into your life, because you'll get more out of it. People say to me, how are you feeling? I go, like, I feel great. You know, my mum was always saying to me, do you feel tired? And I kind of go like, well, I do a little bit, but I'm not exhausted. And I can tell you of times where I would be exhausted to the point where I felt like I couldn't even speak. I had to lie on the floor in the day in my office with the door shut because I had no energy and I couldn't understand what was going on. I never want to go there again. I've got a huge busy week planned for 1 week off. And I'm kind of going like, I think I would rather just have lain down in the garden all week. But I know I will have sufficient energy because I nurture my own energy systems. And I want you to learn to do that too. I don't want to say like I'm perfect, because I'm not. Okay, you know I mess up sometimes. You know, this time last year in retreat day, I lost my voice for 10 days. I had to cancel some of my cafe classes because I couldn't speak. That's the universe telling me, Rachel, you're not listening. All right, I've overrun time. I do apologise. I really, really hope that understanding your hormones will really help you to do that. I'm going to cut and paste the 10 things. I read them slightly differently. I'm going to cut and paste the 10 things I've written down and post them in the page and see if they work with you. All right, so tomorrow, okay, we have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 4 days left. Don't feel like you have to do all the sessions, because you can always catch up again. But think about the things about what will bring you the most benefit. What will really help you to feel good at the end of the cafe. I don't want you to get to the end of the cafe feeling exhausted. You know, maybe you have to eat more food, maybe you have to look after your hydration, maybe you need to take supplements. Good time. And I'll see you in the morning. I'm so confused with this cafe. I think we're doing barbell some point tomorrow and cardio. Cardio in the morning, barbell in the evening, and then core and restore. Nice mixture. Okay, take care everybody. Wave out.